Hello viewers, hope you're doing well. My name is Usman. Today we will create a RESTful API of CRUD Operations. So let me give you the overview of the application structure and the project overview. Okay, so let me open here the Intel IJ, and you can see the Spring Boot application is running on port 8080, and this is a Spring Boot application. So to save the data into the database, retrieve, update, delete data with the Spring Boot started data JPA. And for the database, I have used here the MySQL connector, like MySQL database. Okay, so here's the MySQL database. You can see here the database name, that is CRUD_DB, and under the CRUD_DB you can see here the customer table, and here's the VS Code. You can see here the application is running with port 400. So in the Angular application, I've used here the routing and the components to implement the functionality of the CRUD operations in front-end Angular. So I've integrated this Angular with the Spring Boot. Let's go to our UI. You can see here it's running on port 4200. So let me open here localhost 4200. After successfully running, you can see here the details of the customer that's stored in the database. That is a name, email, phone, and the action. So every row have two buttons. You can see here update and delete. And you can see post a new customer. Let me click on this button, and it will navigate to a post customer component. You can see here the routing is also changed in the URL, and here's the form to post a new customer. So let me add here a new customer, that is customer 4, and I'm inputting here the email and the phone. So let's click on this post button. For this, we can create inspect. So let's click on this button, and you can see we got a response from our backend. So the ID we got, that is 11, email name, and phone. So let's back to our get all customer component, and here you can see the customer we got from our backend. Let me click on this row. So you can see here the ID, that is 1. Let me click on this customer 2 row. You can see here the ID we got, that is 3. Okay, we are getting the ID from the URL, and all the API from our backend, that is get customer by ID. So after getting the record by ID, I have passed the customer into the form. Okay, so after that, the user will click on this update button to save the updated record. So let me open here the console again, and I'm putting here like name Usman, and the email is usman@example.com, and the phone is remain same. So let's click on this update button, and here you can see that we got the response from our backend, that is ID3, and the email name is updated one, and the phone is same. So let's back to our get all customer component, and you can see the name and the email is updated successfully. Okay, so you can see the delete button. So let me click on this delete button. Okay, so you can see the response we got from the conditional, and we got the updated record. This is the complete overview of our project. So let's get started. So first of all, let's create an enterprise level Spring Boot application from Spring Initializer. You can see here the official website of Spring Initializer, that is spring.start.spring.io. So let me select here the project as a Maven and the language Java, and the version I'm selecting here 3.1.4, and here I'm putting home.code with projects, and the artifact ID is _spring, and for the packaging I'm selecting here jar, and Java is 70. Okay, let's add the few dependencies. So first of all, Spring Web that is used to build RESTful APIs. We need to add here notebook that is used to reduce the boilerplate. Let's search here GPA that is used to perform the operations with the database, like retrieve, post, delete the data from the database. And the last, we need to add MySQL driver that is used to link Spring Boot application with MySQL. So let's create the project. Now you can see. So let me unzip this. Let me cut and add into our folder. So let's open in our Intel IJ ID. You can see here our Spring Boot project is open in the Intel IJ ID. So here's the main package of our Spring Boot application, and here's the main package, and here's the main file of our Spring Boot application, and here's the resources package. And in this application properties, we will write a configuration to connect the my Spring Boot application with MySQL database. And here you can see the form.xml file. So this file includes versions of the Spring Boot application and the dependencies that I have added from Spring Initializer. You can see here is a Spring Boot version that I have added 3.1.4, and here's the details of our Spring Boot application, like group ID, artifact ID, version, name, description. And in the property section, you can see here the Java version that is 17. Okay, and here's the dependencies section where all the dependencies have added, like JPA, web, MySQL connector J, Lombok, and here's the starter test dependencies that is included with Spring Web. And here you can see the build section where two plugins. First one is a Maven and the second one is a Lombok. So let me open this application properties, and let's write here the database configuration. So you can see here Spring data source.url. I've added the URL of our Spring MySQL database. So it is a JDBC colon MySQL colon / localhost because our database is running locally in our machine. I have added here localhost and port that is 3306. You can see here localhost colon 3306. Okay, is the name of our database. So let me create here the database. Let's click here, create a new schema in the connected server. So let's click on this and paste here the name. That is CRUD_DB and click on apply and then apply. Finish. Okay, now you can see database is created. So let's write another configuration like the username and the password of the database because we need to add the credentials of our database to allow the Spring Boot application to log in the MySQL. So spring.datasource.username, that is a root. This is the username of our database. Spring.datasource.password, that is also a root. Okay, so this is the credential of our MySQL database. You can use your credentials of the MySQL. So you can see spring.datasource.driver-class-name, that is com.mysql.cj.jdbc.driver. So it's a driver class name. So here are the two properties of our JPA, that is string.jp.hibernate.edl-auto, that is update. And here the last property we need to add string.jp.show -s1 is equals to true. Okay, let's run the application. You can see here the application started on port 8080, that is the by default port from the Spring Boot. We can change the port by using this statement, that is server.port is equals to 9000. Let me stop the application and run again. And you can see the port is changed successfully, that is 9000. I will use a by default port, that is 8080. So let's stop the application. Okay. So in this package, I'm going to create a few sub packages. So the first one is controller, second one is entity, third one is service, and the last one is repository. So the creation of our Spring Boot application is completed. So let's go to our local directory and let me open here the CMD to create a new Angular application. So let me open here CMD, and here we need to write an Angular application command, that is ng new CRUD. Let's click on enter, and here the question is, would you like to add Angular routing? So I'm clicking here on Y button to say yes and hit enter. And here, which style sheet format would you like to use? I'm selecting here CSS. Okay, so let's click on enter, and you can see it will take a couple of minutes to create a new Angular application. So let's wait for this. Let's open the Angular project in VS Code. Let me open here the terminal to run the Spring Boot application. Let me open here the terminal to run the Spring Boot application. And here we need to write a command, that is ng space server to run the Angular application, and it will start building the project. And you can see it started on port 4200, and it is also running on a locally on machine. So let me copy this link and open into our browser, and you can see the results from the Angular application. So this is the code written into our app.html. You can see here the file. The code is already written in Angular application. So the UI of this code is this one. Okay, so let me create here a few components that I will use. So let me open the terminal again, and here we need to write a command, that is ng g for generate, c for component, and here I'm going to write a subpackage name, that is components/post-customer. The first one component is post customer. Let's click on enter, and it will take a couple of seconds to create a new component, and you can see the component is created successfully with the post customer. So let's create another component, that is get all customers, and the last component we need to create is update customer, update-customer. And you can see the three components are created successfully. So let's create here the service, that is customer service. So the command is ng g for generate, s for service, and here we need to write the package name service / name of the service is customer. And you can see the service package with the two classes, customer service.ts and customer service.spec.ts. Spec.ts is mostly used to write the tests of the code. So we will mostly use customer service.ts class to write the code. Okay, so let me close this and refresh the link, and you can see. Okay, So here you can see the Spring Boot application. Let me stop this and let's create an entity in the entity package. So the class name is customer. Let's annotate it with @data annotation @entity and the name of the table. So this annotation is used to reduce the boilerplate code, like the properties have a getter and setters constructors, and here's the @entity that you use to make this class as a table in the database, and here's the table annotation that you use to write the name into the database. So let's add here the few properties. I'm making this property as a primary key of this table. So I've added here the @ID. Second addition, we need to add here generated value and strategy, that is generation type of identity. So here are the properties. The first one is ID, name, email, and font. So let's go to our user repository, and here I'm going to create. Let's extend with JPA repository. You can see here. So let me give the customer type of our primary key. That is. So we need to add annotation that is @repository. So in the services package, I'm going to create the class that is customer service. So let's annotate with @service, like this class react as a service of the application. So let me inject here customer repository, and we need to add here annotation that is required ARGS constructor from Lombok. And you can see here there is gone from here. So let's create here the method that is a public, and the response type we need to add here a customer and name of the method that is post customer. So in the argument it will receive a customer object. Let me add here. So here we need to return customer repository.save, and here we need to give the customer object. Let's call this method from our controller class. So let me create here the controller. So the controller name is customer controller. So let's annotate with @rest controller, and the second annotation we need to add here request mapping, and I'm adding here /API string, and the third annotation I'm adding here required ARGS constructor. Let's inject here our customer service. So it will be a private final customer service. So let's create here the API, and it will be a public, and the return type we need to add here customer and name of the method. So in the argument it will receive customer entity. So we need to add here the annotation that is a request body and the customer object over here. So here we need to call customer service dot post customer method, and we need to give customer object over here. So we need to add here a return, and you can see all is gone. So let me make it as a post mapping, and we need to add here the URL of this API. So I'm putting here /customer. So the address of this API is /API/customer. So let's run the application, and let's see it will create a table in our database or not. You can see here there's nothing in our database right now, and you can see application is started on port 8080. Let me refresh the database, and you can see there's a customer table created successfully in our database. You can see here the columns ID, email, name, phone. So let's test this API from Postman. You can see here the URL of our backend application. So let's write the URL of our API after this, and let's attack the body. So we need to select here body and then raw, and here we need to select JSON, and here we need to add email, phone, and name. Okay, you can see here the email is a string, phone is a string, and the name is also a string. Let me add phone like. So let's click on this send button, and you can see the status we got 200. Okay, and here's the ID that we got from our backend. Let me refresh the table, and you can see that ID, email, name, and the phone. So let's call this API from Angular, and let's register customer component in our app routing module.ts. You can see here. So let me give you the space, and we need to add a path. Then we need to load. Let me open here app component.html, and we need to remove this code, and here we need to add router outlet to see the results of our routing components. So let me open here the UI, add here the URL of our post customer component, and you can see post customer component works. So here in app module.ts, let me add here a few things. So the first one is forms module, reactive form modules. Let's start with form module. We copy and add over here, and the last thing we need to add, that is HTTP client module. Let's import this @Angular/common/HTTP, and here we need to add HTTP client module. You can see here all is gone. So let me close this, and let's go to our customer service, and here I'm going to inject private HTTP client. I've created here the object of HTTP client, and let me add here the URL of our backend application, that is a post, and here's the variable name basic_URL, and here I'm adding the URL of our backend application. So let me copy from here. So the URL is http://localhost:888080. Let's go to the method. So the method name is post customer, and in the method it will receive, and this method will return this dot http.post, and here we need to add the basic URL, that is a URL of our backend application. and the URL of our API. So it will be a /API/customer. With this, we need to pass here the customer object. This method is ready in our customer service. So let's call this method from our TS. You can see here the file post customer component. Let me add here the constructor and the lifecycle loop, that is ng on in it, that is used to initialize the Reactive form. So first of all, I'm injecting here our customer service, and the second thing, I'm injecting here private FP, that is form builder. Let me import this manually at the rate Angular/forms. Here we need to add form builder, and you can see there is gone. I'm initializing here the form variable with the form group. So we need to call here this dot post customer form is equals to this dot fp dot group, and here we need to declare the properties that we need to get from the static form from HTML. Okay, so the first one is a name, so it is by default null, and here validator dot required, and second we need to input form, it means same as the name. The first one is a null, and the second one is validator dot required. Email. Okay, so let's create a form in our HTML. So let me copy here the code, and here's the CSS code. Let me copy this. You can see here the properties of CSS file. And you can see the form. So here's the form tag, and here's the first div. That is the input of our name, and here's the email input, and here's our phone input, and here's the post button. So let's go to our UI, and you can see the form. So let's bind this form with our TS. So first of all, we need to bind a form tag with the TS. So let me add the property that is a form. We need to bind every input with our TS. So here we need to select form control name, and here we need to give the property name that we have declared in our TS. So the first one is a name, second input is an email, and the last one is our form is bind with our TS. So let's get these values on the click event. So let me add here an event that is a click, and here we need to call a method. Let's declare a method in our TS. So now I'm adding here console.log this dot post customer form dot value. Let's print the whole form in our console. Let me open here the console. Let's input here the name, email, and phone over here, and you can see we are getting the whole form in our console, email, phone, and name. So let's send the whole form to our method in our customer service. So let's call here the method service this dot customer service dot post customer, and we need to give the whole form values. Let's subscribe this and save the response into this variable, and let's add here the statement that is a console.log, and I'm adding here a variable that is rest. So let's enter the data again. Before calling this API, we need to add here the annotation in our controller class. So the annotation is @cross origin. So let's run the application. Now you can see application is upon 8080. Let's test the API, and you can see the response we got from our backend. Let's refresh the table in our database, and you can see the record saved successfully, like ID2, email, and name, and a phone over here. So let's save another customer, and you can see we got response from our backend. Let's refresh the table, and you can see. So let's create an API in Spring Boot, and after that we will call this API from Angular. So you can see here the class that is customer service. So here I'm going to create a new method. So the method name is get all customers, and it will return a list of customers. So here we need to return customer repository.find all. It will return all records from our database. So let's call this method from our customer controller. And here we need to return customer service dot get all customer method. Let me add here the annotation that is get mapping to call this API, and here we need to put the URL. So let's run the application and test the API. You can see here application is upon 8080. Let me open the Postman, and you can see the URL of our backend application /API/customers, and here we need to select get, click on this send button, and you can see we got a response. Here are the records that saved in our database, and here the status that is 200. Okay, so let's call this API from our Angular. First of all, let's register our get all customers component in app routing module.ts. I have put here an empty path. You can see here. Let's go with this URL, and you can see that get all customer works. And here's the CSS code. You can see the properties, and you can see the button that is a post new customer. This button is used to navigate the user from get all customers to post customer component. And here's the table tag where I have a T head with the 40 rows, name, email, phone, and action. And here's the T body where we have TRs, that is name, email, phone, and the two buttons, that is update and delete. So let's go to our UI, and here you can see the button and the table. So let's add here the router link and the address of our post customer component of this button. So let me add here router link, and here we need to pass the URL of our post customer component. So you can see here the URL, that is customer. So let's add here /customer. Let's click on this button, and you can see it's navigating to our post customer component. Okay, so let's start the implementation of the API. Let's go to our customer service, and here I'm going to create a method that is get all this .http.get, and in the argument of get we need to pass the URL of our backend application and then the URL of our API. The URL of our API is /API/customer. Let's call this API from our component. I've injected here the service in our get all customer component. I've also added lifecycle hook in our component. Let's create the method that is get all customer. This customer service get all customer. This method is created in our customer service. Later I have subscribed this to get the response, and I have saved the response into this variable, and I have added a statement that is console log to print the response in our console. So to invoke this method, we need to call here in ng on init lifecycle hook with this keyword, and here we need to add get all customers. Let's go to our UI. Let me open here the inspect. Let me refresh the component, and you can see we got response from our backend. So let's show the response into our UI. For this, I'm initializing here with empty array. And I gave all the response to this customers array. So let's fetch this customers array in our HTML. So we need to add here a loop in our TR section. So we need to use ng for, and here we need to initialize the variable that is let customer of customers. So this variable will get the record one by one, and here we need to bind everything like customer dot name, customer dot email. You can see there that is property name does not exist on type neighbor. So let me add here any array, and you can see. So let's add here a phone. So and you can see we are seeing the data from our database. So now I'm comment this t head. Okay, so let's go to our post new customer, and here I'm going to add a customer like customer 3. You can see here customer 3 is posted successfully. So here, after the posting new customer, we need to navigate the user from this component to get all customers component. So for this, we need to inject here a router in our constructor. There we need to use this dot. There we need to give the URL of our get all customers component. Now you can see the customer is posted successfully with the customer phone name, and it's also navigate us to get all customers component. Okay. So here I'm going to create a method. You can see here the return type is customer, and here's the name of the method, that is get customer by ID. And in the argument, we are getting an ID from the URL, that is a type long. And here you can see the annotation, that is @get mapping to access this API. And here's the URL of this API, that is /customer/ID. We got an actual value from the URL. Okay, let's go to our customer service, and here I'm going to create a method. Here you can see the method, that is public return type customer, and here's the name of the method. And in the argument, it will receive ID of the customer. We need to return here customer repository.find by ID method, that is used to get the record from the backend with the ID. I've passed here the ID. In case if a record is not found, then we need to return a null. Okay, so here we need to call a method from our customer service, that is get customer by ID, and here we need to pass ID. Let's save the response of this method into this object, that is, and here in the statement we need to check, that is in case if customer is equals to null, then we need to return here response entity dot not found dot build. In case if customer is not equals to null, then we need to return here status. Okay, and in the argument we need to pass here the objectives in customer. We will test this API from Postman. You can see application started on port 8080. Let's go to our Postman. Add here the path of our API, that is /API/customer/ID, and the mapping is get to send button. So you can see here I have put here the ID 1, that is 404 not found error, because we don't have any record with the ID 1. So let's put here ID 2, and you can see we got response from our backend, name customer 1, email, and the font. So let me put here ID 3, and you can see we got response with the status 200. Okay, so let me enter again ID 1, and you can see the status we got 404 not found. Okay, so let's go to our Angular site. So you can see update customer component. So let me register here the update component in our app routing module.ts. So here we need to add the path of our update component, that is /customer/:ID. We will get an ID from the URL. So that's why I passed here the variable name of the ID. So the URL is this. Then we need to load update customer component. Okay. So let me add here /customer/1, and you can see update customer component works. So let's load this component on the click of the button. Let me add the button into our post customer component. Let me add the button into our get all customers component.html. Let me uncomment this. So let me put here the URL of our specific component. For the component URL is /customer/customer.id. So let me open here the CSS, and let me uncomment this properties and this one. And you can see the update button. Let me click on this button, and you can see it navigating us to update customer component, and you can see the ID. So let me click on this update button, and you can see it's navigating us to update customer component, and here's the ID. Okay, so we need to get the ID from the URL, and let's call the API from the backend. So before this, let me create here the method into our customer service. So let me copy the method and add here, and name of the method is get customer by ID. And in the argument, it will receive an ID that is a number type. So here we need to add the URL. So the URL is /API/customer/ID. So let me add here the ID variable name that we need to concatenate with the string. So that's why I've added here, and you can see the mapping is get. So let's call this method from our TS. So before this, we need to get the ID from the URL. Let me inject here activated route, and we also need to inject here service, that is customer service. Okay, so let's get an ID from the URL. So we need to call here this dot activated route dot snapshot dot params, and here we need to pass the URL name that we have declared in our app routing module.ts. So let me copy the name exactly, and we need to add in our update customer component.ts. Let me add here. So let me add here the ng-oriented lifecycle loop to call the method. So here I'm going to create a method that is get customer by ID. In the argument, it will receive an ID that is a type of number. And here we need to call this dot service dot get customer by ID. And here we need to pass the ID. And then we need to subscribe this to get the result. Let's save this result into this variable. And let me add here the console.log statement to print the result into our response. So to invoke this method, we need to add here this dot get customer by ID. Here we remove this, and here we will call with this dot ID. So let's go to our UI and let me open here the inspect and refresh the component. And you can see we got a response from our backend with the details, email, ID, name, font. So let me open again the get all customer component, and let's click on this update button, and you can see the record we got from the backend. So let's bring this record into our form. So you can see update customer form. I have initialized this variable with the form group, and after that I have injected here form builder, and you can see I have called this variable that is update customer form, and here this .sb.group, and here I have declared the properties that we got from the form, name, phone, email. So let's bind this with this property that is form group, and here we need to change the name of the form is update customer. Let me remove this, and let's change the name of the button is update, and you can see the form is created into the UI. Let's add the details into this form. So we just need to clear this dot update form dot attach value, and here we just need to pass a variable that is a res to tag the values of the customer, and you can see the value is patched successfully. So let me go again to get all customer component, and I'm clicking on this update button, and you can see. So let's start the functionality. You can see the Spring Boot application, and here I'm going to create a method that is update customer. So you can see public return type customer, and here's the name of the method that is update customer, and in the argument it will receive object of customer, and it will return the response of this statement that is customer repository.save, and here we need to pass the object to save the updated record. Okay, so let's call this method from our controller. So here I'm going to create a method. So you can see method is public and the return type is a customer. And here we need to get the customer with the API. So here I'm added here the annotation that is add the request body. So let's add the annotation that is our customer service method that is get customer by ID, and here we need to pass ID. So let's save the response this method into this object that is existing customer. After that, here we need to check that is existing customer is equals to null. Then here we need to return not found dot build. In case if existing customer is not null, then here we need to set name, and we will get name from customer dot get name. Existing customer dot set email, and we will get email from customer dot get email. Existing customer dot set name phone, and we will get phone from customer object. After that, we need to call here our customer service and the method that is update customer, and here we need to pass existing customer object because we have a objective data into this object. So let's save the response of this method into this object that is customer updated customer. After that, we need to return here response entity dot okay, and in the argument we need to pass here updated customer object. So let's run the application and test this API with Postman, and later we will call this API from Angular. So let's put here the data into our Postman. So let me add here the URL, that is /API/customer/ID. So for example, I want to update this record with the ID 5. So let me put here the ID 5. Let's select here raw and then JSON, and here we need to pass the body. So first of all, we need to pass here name, that is name, email, phone. Okay. You can see here application started port 8080. Let's hit this API, and you can see we got a response from our backend, that is 200. Okay, and the ID 5 name user. So let's refresh the database, and you can see the updated record saved successfully into our database. So let me refresh the get all customer component, and you can see we got an updated record from our backend. So let's go to our service, and here I'm going to create a method to call the API from our backend. So the method name is, and here in the argument it will see two things. The first one is ID, and the second one is the customer object. So here we need to change the mapping, that is put, and the URL, that is /API/customer/ID, and after that we need to pass here customer object. Okay, so let's call this method from our update customer component. So let me create here the method, that is update customer, and here we need to call this dot service dot update customer, and here we need to pass two things. First one is the ID, and the second thing we need to pass here, that is values from the form. So here we need to call update customer form dot value. Okay, let's subscribe this and save the response into this variable, and let me add here the console.log. Show the response into our console. So let's call this method on the event. Let me add here the event click, and here we need to call this method. You can see it. Okay, so let's go to our UI. For example, I'm going to update this user. So let me click here, update button, and here we need to pass name, that is Johan @test.com, and here I'm going to change the number, that is. Let's click on this update button. Before this, let me open here the inspect, and you can see the records updated successfully. Let's back navigate to our get all customer component, and here you can see. Okay, so let me add here the few more statement, that is if the rest.id not is equals to null, then we need to navigate the user to the get all customer component. So we just need to add here navigate the router dot navigate by URL, and here we need to pass the URL of our get all customer component, that is this one. Let me show you. Okay, so I got it here. And here's the phone number, that is, and you can see it's navigating back to our get all customer component, and also record updated successfully. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to create here a method in our customer service. So you can see the method name, that is create customer, and the return type is void, and in the argument you will see that is the return type log, and here we need to call a method from a repository, that is create by ID, and I have passed in the ID. So let's call this method from our controller. Here I'm going to create a method. You can see here the annotation I have added here to this method, that is delete mapping, and here's a URL, that is /customer/ID. So we will get an ID from the URL. So I've added here the annotation, that is @path variable and the long ID, and here's the name of the method. Here we need to call the method from our customer service, that is get customer by ID. We need to call this method because we need to send the response in case if customer not found with the ID. Add here the object, that is save the response of this method into this object, that is customer, existing customer, and here we need to check existing customer is equals to null. Then we need to return response entity dot not found dot build. So in case if existing customer not null, then here we need to call service. Then we need to call a method from our customer service that is delete customer, and here we need to pass an ID. After that, we will return response entity dot okay dot build. So let's run the application and test this API from our postman. So let me add here the URL, that is /API/customer/ID. So here I want to delete the customer with the ID 3. So let me add here the ID 3, and let's select here the delete from the drop down. Application is started. Let's click on the send button, and you can see we got a response that is 200. Okay. Let me refresh the table, and you can see the record deleted successfully. So let's go to our Angular application, and here I'm going to create a method. Let me copy this, and the method name is delete customer, and in the argument it will receive an ID, and the mapping we need to change here delete, and the URL will remain same, that is /API/customer/ID. Let's call this method from our get all customer component. Let me change the method. In the argument it will receive an ID. So let me add here ID, that is the data number, and after that we need to call here our customer service and the method that is delete customer. Pass here the ID, subscribe this, save the response into this variable, and let's add here the console.log statement to print the result into our console. Let's call this method on the delete button. Let me open here, and let's copy this line, and let me rename the button. So here we need to add the click event, and we need to call this method. So in the argument we need to pass here the ID. We will get ID from customer.id. Let me change the class name, that is btn-delete. Let me copy this and add into our features code. And you can see, let me open here the inspect and post a new customer with the name customer5, email, and the phone over here. Let's post this, and you can see, okay. So let's delete this customer5, and you can see that we got a response from our backend that is null. Let me refresh the component, and you can see we got a updated record successfully. After that, we need to call here a method that is get all customers to get an updated record from our backend. So let me post a new user. Let's delete this customer4, and you can see we got a response, and we also getting an updated report from our backend. So that's all for now from my side. I hope you like this video. If you have any confusion, you can do comment, and also subscribe to my channel for more videos and hit the bell icon. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.